Good evening, everyone. I almost said good morning because I'm so used to saying good morning on Sundays. Thank you for braving the weather and the roads. It's quite the storm we're going to be hit with these next couple of days. So I'm grateful that you're here to I guess, celebrate or have a moment of thoughtfulness, mindfulness going into the holidays, which I know I definitely need going into the holidays. I wanted to start today's service with reciting the five remembrances. So I'd love it if we could say this together. And together we say, I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. I am of the nature to have ill health. There is no way to escape having ill health. I am of the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. My deeds are my closest companions. I am the beneficiary of my deeds. My deeds are the ground on which I stand. We took some time to light some candles, whether it be for somebody in your life who may have passed, or maybe it's somebody who just needs a little bit of extra thought this holiday season. And there were some gathas that I was going to print out for you, and I didn't. Baby brain is a real thing. But there was a lighting a candle gatha that I thought was something I'd like to share with you. And then there's another quote about lighting candles that I thought was appropriate for the evening. So I'm going to start with a quote by N. Braverman. We light candles in testament that faith makes miracles possible. And this gatha, I have a list of holiday gathas that I found that was written by Mary Rose O'Reilly, and she is the author of The Love of Impermanent Things. And the lighting a candle gatha goes, I honor the wisdom of my ancestors and teachers. With the help of all beings, I vow to open my heart to illumination. And if you'd like a copy of these, I can get them to you. So don't hesitate to send me an email. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about, the whole talk will be about Jesus as a bodhisattva. And for somebody who, myself, I grew up in a Catholic faith, but it wasn't ever a serious one. I think a lot of Catholics refer to it as someone who's a creaster. Somebody who visits on Christmas and Easter. So when it comes to Christian scripture, I haven't spent a whole lot of my life studying it. So I did spend some time reaching out to some friends one who recently became ordained as a pastor, a minister, and she had some good information and some great things to share. But I also want to touch on what a bodhisattva is and why both Jesus and bodhisattvas are much of the same thing. So to start my talk, I want to touch on a quote by the Buddhist monk Ajahn Chah. And he said, anything that inspires us to see what is true and do what is good is proper practice. And our celebration of Christmas, at least here in the West, is a really good opportunity to do that. Traditionally, it is celebrated as Jesus' birthday. However, there are a lot of other celebrations associated with Christmas. We think of Santa Claus. We think of Noel or, certain pagan holidays that celebrate something similar, at least when it comes to decorating a tree. But because we associate it so closely and it has a large tradition that has been built around Jesus's birthday, the season is meant to inspire generosity, love, and goodwill towards men. And Jesus spoke of generosity and consideration and kindness and mutual regard, and he encouraged these teachings to be shared with the world when he spoke with his disciples. And his life came in the form of showing other people the opportunity to know that life really can be wonderful. Now, in Buddhism, we think of a bodhisattva, we think of somebody who forgoes their enlightenment to help others suffer less. Bodhisattvas are frequently putting their desires for themselves aside. I think Thich Nhat Hanh put it the best in his book, The Bodhisattva Path. If we analyze the word bodhisattva, we see that bodhi means awakening, enlightenment, or deep understanding, and sattva means a living being. A bodhisattva is someone who enlightens other beings and enlightens himself. Enlightening oneself and enlightening others go together. This is something many of us have an aspiration to do. Understanding also means love. Once there is understanding, there has to be love. And without understanding, there cannot be true love. So Jesus spent his entire life in service to others. And it was the message that I have interpreted during my time as a Christian is that his intentions came from helping others know the purity of their hearts and how to spread love to other people, much of the same way that the Buddha taught of Buddha nature, or the fundamental nature of all things. And while the historical Jesus lived 2,000 years ago, as Thich Nhat Hanh reminds us in his book, Living Buddha, Living Christ, the living Christ is still here today, right now, living on in the hearts of millions of people, if not unknowingly every single person in the world. So when I thought about what is the living Christ still doing, how is this bodhisattva still inspiring people to recognize their suffering and how to work through their pain and their unsatisfactoriness for life. So I reached out on Facebook to all my friends out there, and I said, what's a Bible verse from the New Testament that gives you strength or helps you through painful times, especially during the holidays? And I got some really, really, really great answers that I'm really grateful I got the opportunity to reflect on. And so I'm going to share this bodhisattva's words with you, and then I'll give you my take, and hopefully you can find some reflection for yourself in this as well. The first one was from the book of Isaiah 58:11. And the Lord will continually guide you and satisfy your soul in scorched and dry places, and give strength to your bones, and you will be like a watered garden and like a spring of water whose waters do not fail. To me, this verse spoke of perseverance, and that is the fourth of the 6 perfections. It's a virtue to be cultivated to bring strength and enlightenment to our practice. Without perseverance or endurance, we really can't go on no matter how much we want to. The first thought that came to mind was an untrained runner who attempted to run the Chicago Marathon. And I can only imagine that about the first hour in, there would be a lot of suffering endured as they try to push on through the rest of the maybe only at that point 24 miles out of the 26. The body would be going through a lot of pain. The mind would be going through a lot of pain. It just would be an incredibly unsatisfactory experience. So the more time you spend cultivating good habits in your practice, the less suffering you will experience. It is always possible to engage perseverance for guidance on the path, whether that perseverance comes in the form of one of the Buddhist suttas, or facing a frustration of family drama during the holidays. We always have this ability to persevere within us. It's just a matter of making a choice to engage with it or not. The second verse is Micah 6:8. Jesus said, "He has shown you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." For me, this came as a reminder to turn inwards towards your Buddha nature, towards the present moment. And the Buddha, when he taught his Four Noble Truths, it was important for us to recognize that we suffer, but it's not to get caught by that suffering. And we don't want to suffer. I mean, that's why we recognize it as something that we are working on, I guess you can say, letting go of. We are working on as a way of holding hands with it. While suffering is inevitable, we are encouraged to act justly and to love mercy. Speaking of the holiday seasons, just imagine this situation, and I know that this is a situation that many women, especially in the West, will find themselves in over the holidays, and likely men as well. Many family members. You've driven 3 hours to visit family for the holidays. The whole way there, your baby is in the backseat crying because they hate being in a car seat. And your toddler is either singing Disney's Frozen's Do You Want to Build a Snowman? Or they have thrown their water bottle for the 5th time across the floor of the car, and they've again asked you for water. And every time you give it back to them, it goes right back to the floor. And so you arrive at your family's house, and rather than trying to find a moment of relief, it is somebody accusing you of why you're late, or somebody saying, you really could have gotten here on time, in a very passive aggressive way. Oh, your grandmother's been waiting for you for so long. And it's just another little sting that you're trying to do your best, and nobody seems to be recognizing it. Not saying that a baby or a toddler should, but so you get inside, and you feel you're starting to engage with your family, hoping to get through this evening, and it's even that thought of hoping to get through an evening with your family. You'd think that would be something that you'd want to enjoy, but then your toddler comes running up to you, and you're in the middle of trying to feed them something healthy, and all they want is cookies and cake and all the other wonderful holiday treats that are there. And you are constantly berating yourself and beating yourself up for feeling judged that you can't get a good snack into your kid for the evening, because that 3-hour-long drive home is going to be a mess. And so we are stuck in these situations. And I say this again in reflection that there are many folks going through something like that through the holidays. Not saying that everybody does. I'm sure some people have wonderful families that they get to experience lovely holidays with. It's just not all of us, but suffering is inevitable. So it's this thought process, getting back to that quote or that verse. He has shown you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. And for me, if I take that word God and I think of my Buddha nature, to walk humbly with my Buddha nature, and going inwards and realizing that it's not about me. It's not about me taking it personally, because therefore I'm making it permanent. I'm making my suffering permanent. I'm making the situation permanent. I'm making these judgments of myself permanent. What's being asked is to go inward and recognize that love and mercy for the people in your life that need it most. Screaming baby, the fussy toddler, or the, as my friend would say, the Sybil-like toddler, if you remember the film Sybil with multiple personalities. Or even your in-laws or other family members who are not finding that they can sit well with their own suffering or their own miserable thoughts. And those are the folks that we need to be able to give love and mercy to, because they need it more than we do. We really need to recognize how important it is to provide that to each other. When not just giving of yourself always, but it's important to take that love and mercy first for yourself and then to be able to reflect it back to others. This compassion and unconditional love has been showing up so much in these verses that I've read that people have shared with me. And I think to myself, how could Jesus not be a bodhisattva? One of the ways as practitioners we come back to these moments to be able to not get lost in the future or not get lost in the past or in that state of unease or discomfort is coming back to the breath by centering and remembering, coming back to our true Buddha nature, coming back to that sense of presence. And as you go through your holidays, and if you find yourself in a situation where things are overwhelming, remember that. That is where Jesus has encouraged us to go back to, as well as the Buddha. And now my toddler handed me all these papers, so let me make sure they're all in the right order. I printed them at home today. She was running from the printer and then running back to me and running from the printer, and she was just really enjoying helping. And I think the couple of pages got out of whack. So there is something I really like quotes. If you haven't experienced that during my talks, I really love sharing things that other people have said so well, because it has definitely made a difference in my own life. And this particular one is from Thich Nhat Hanh, and it's about Christmas. And he says, "This Christmas, if you buy and bring home a Christmas tree to decorate, remember that your true home is not found outside yourself, but it's right inside your own heart. Our true home is not a place far removed from us in space and time. It's not something we can buy. Our true home is present right here, right in the here and the now. If only we know how to return to it and to be truly present to it." So the last verse that was shared with me was Proverbs 3:5-6. And Jesus said, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding." Lean not on your own understanding. "In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight." So the last verse we talked about, it touches on that a little bit. I see this as bearing witness to the impermanence of life by not learning how to take things so personally. We often talk about a no self in Buddhism, and this, while a touchy and difficult subject to wrap words around, which I don't think is possible to wrap words about the teachings of no self, it is really something that is experienced or understood. This particular verse, again, really comes back to that idea of impermanence that we talk about in the remembrances. And I'm going to read it again because I think what is often missed is the idea of our preconceived notions and how we often let those guide us in our decisions and in the way that we react and the way that we walk and talk and, are with the world. And often those are the places where we need the most work. "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight." Oftentimes our understanding is a misunderstanding of reality. So this situation, you've just made a lovely dinner, and your dog walks in, and a fairly big dog, big enough to have their tail hit the side of the table, and their tail knocks over a dish, and all of a sudden in your mind, dinner's ruined. Everything's gone wrong. It's just horrible. The night is over, right? You've spent hours in the kitchen. You got up at 7 a.m. to make sure that everything would run smoothly, and it didn't. And that right there is a misunderstanding in itself. So a dish fell over. Does that mean the whole dinner's ruined? No, just one dish. We can go on, you know. Even if you were just there to enjoy the rest of the evening, that's what happens. That's the way it goes. We often wrap ourselves up in these stories, these unnecessary stories, and I know I'm true of it myself. And we get lost trying to make things permanent. Dish is broken, the dinner's ruined. That's the permanent nature of the evening. And here, lean not on your own understanding. Trust in the Lord, trust in the Buddha nature, trust in, in this idea of no self. Now, of course, the Buddha has different teachings and encourages us to experience that for ourselves. And I'm sure in many of the scriptures there is probably a verse for that I haven't seen. But in all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Whether it's following Jesus's path in the way that he is teaching how to come back to yourself, how to come back home, just like Thich Nhat Hanh was talking about. How do you come back home? It's by giving up those perceptions of that own understanding. This is really all we have, is this present moment, this one right here, right now. Not the next one, not the one after it, this one, and then this one. And the question that we are often asking, at least I ask myself in Buddhism and in my own practice, is why spend another second in unhappiness? Even when I'm in my unhappiness, why spend another second in it? I've been caught up in it, my frustration over my toddler screaming jingle bells for the 100th time in the house and waking the baby up from her nap. But I have to be able to push through it and think not about myself, but to be thinking more about other people. And, what makes us get stuck in that? Is it pride? Is it anger? Is it our own unskillful convictions of control? We need to have things be our way. And why is that? Do we really have to have things be our way? What I really appreciate about Jesus's teachings is that at the heart of everything, we're all the same. When Christians speak of Jesus's love, this is what we are being asked to experience. Buddha and Jesus had an exemplary, exquisite, magnificent, otherworldly love for the world. And their aim was to help others see that same love that is within all people. In the Mangala Sutta, the Buddha says, "There is little dust in the eyes of people. Remove that ignorance. They will walk on the path of the Dharma. Being learned and skillful in craft, disciplined in morals, and well cultivated, being gifted with the words of wisdom, each is a great blessing." Jesus and Buddha knew that peace on earth is possible. While suffering will always be here, we can develop the skills to lovingly embrace our pain and see the goodness behind it. We all get sick. We all grow old. We all die. So why not enjoy the ride? Jesus advocated for equanimity and peace. He embraced suffering as his necessary destiny. This is the very first noble truth that the Buddha teaches. Jesus not only taught that he must suffer many things, but he also declared that any would-be disciple deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. In denying the self, we can see how we can be of service to others. Jesus taught that if you follow his teachings, you will know God. The Buddha taught that if you follow the Buddhist teachings, you will know nirvana. Sounds like both of these people already knew the possibility of peace and renounced it so others could witness it. Jesus suffered in order to save his people from their sins. Sounds like a bodhisattva to me. So I have this last passage that I found from a website article that I thought would be appropriate. Jesus' message of repentance and turning to God was coupled with a message of generosity, forgiveness, love, and justice. The Gospels portray Jesus as a powerful teacher who often taught through evocative parables. In one parable, a man is robbed, beaten, and left on the road. The Good Samaritan. Many pass him by without giving him any help, including respected members of his own community. The one who does stop to help him is a Samaritan, a person considered a foreigner, an outsider. Jesus insists that the great commandment to love one's neighbor as oneself crosses all ethnic and religious barriers. In his ministry, Jesus himself crossed many social barriers, mingling with the ostracized tax collectors, adulterers, sex workers, as well as the disabled, poor, and the sick. He warned against casting judgment and counseled critics to remember their own imperfections before condemning others. During the holiday season, that is important to keep in mind, both for ourselves and others. How can we create a more peaceful world? Is just by that. Less judgment. Nobody wants to suffer. I can tell you that my own experience, a crying baby could have told you that, especially at 3 a.m. So how can someone else save us from our sins and relieve us from suffering? How is that possible? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Both Jesus and the Buddha taught us how to see the world for what it really is and how we too can transform the suffering of the world. The catch is that it's up to us to stay humble and listen. Jesus asks us to follow 2 great commandments in Mark 12:30-31. The greatest commandment is, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with your soul and with your mind and with your strength. And the second is, love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. Others and self are not 2, but 1. And while the Buddha warns us not to be trapped by concepts, there is an understanding that we are not separate from one another. We are encouraged to let go of our notions and perceptions and see the interbeing of everything around us. The best gift we can give to ourselves, our family, and our community is to practice the Bodhisattva vows. So on your paper, I think now is the appropriate time to recite the 4 Bodhisattva vows. And together we say, all beings, one body, I vow to liberate. Endless blind passion, I vow to uproot. Dharma gates without number, I vow to penetrate. The great way of Buddha, I vow to attain. Thank you. So I want to have an open discussion with the folks online. If you're watching on YouTube, hello everyone. And thank you to Kent for being our tech person today. And to the floor, how can we practice being bodhisattvas during the holidays, as both Jesus encourages us to do and how the Buddha encourages us to do? Give me your thoughts, give me your questions, give us. I shouldn't make it all about me. And we do have 2 microphones here, so if we want to engage in more of an open conversation, that would be great as well. I do have my laptop up to see if we got any comments here. Gail's got the mic.
Igye Su, the original question, repeat the original question before, which you said.
Okay. The question is, how can we practice being bodhisattvas during the holidays?
Maybe not particularly during the holidays, but, and I'm not sure where I retrieved it from. I certainly didn't think of it myself, but I don't know where I heard it. And it's this. Life is 3 Ps. It's not personal. It certainly isn't perfect, and it is not permanent. And so I think not only during the holidays, but in one's life, if we can remember that it isn't personal. Most things are not personal in life. Certainly, they're not perfect. We know about the inevitability of suffering, and none of it is permanent. It's all transitory. Your toddler will grow up.
Yeah.
Your baby will become a toddler. This time will go very quickly, but we stay in the moment and do the best we can. That's why we say practice, because we do it over and over and over again, hopefully each time getting better.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. That 3 Ps, I will remember. I will remember that one.
The quote from Thich Nhat Hanh talking about bringing a Christmas tree home, and that we are our home, hit me because I have often, it's a perceived struggle with a sense of belonging, not feeling I belonged in many places. And so when you said that, I thought, wherever I am home.
That's where you belong.
And that just shifted some things for me. So thank you.
That's wonderful. My husband, I had him read this talk before I had him read some of my notes before I gave the talk, and he said the same thing about that particular quote. And, you know, after he said it, I'm like, okay, that has to stay in the talk. It's got to stay. So I'm really glad that it meant something to you as well. No quotes yet, or no questions yet online. So we can keep this very open, at least
One
for
other
next
thing.
couple of minutes.
Just to the YouTube group, I'm reading a book by Pema Chodron. She's an incredible bodhisattva who has a really interesting life, who was married and was a hippie in Berkeley, and really a really wonderful woman in many regards. And the book that I'm reading now is How You Live is How You Die. And what an interesting thought. But I was reading it today, and this was really pertinent. She says, lean into the groundlessness of life, the groundlessness. You know, you go into your in-laws with the expectation, but just lean into the groundlessness, the not knowingness, and see what happens. She says it's an incredible journey. And I must say that I practice that now and again. My friends will say, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And I'll go, anything. You know, it's not that I don't have an opinion, but I'm really becoming more and more comfortable with just letting things evolve and being all right with groundlessness and no control.
I love that you bring that up. When I first moved to Michigan, it was a whirlwind 2 months. I had a couple months earlier, I moved here in September of 2013, and just a couple months earlier in I can't remember, I think it was in July at some point, I had gone up to Yosemite with some of my friends, and I was with my ex at the time, and we had decided that one of the days we were going to go hike out to we were all going to go on our own individual solo hikes and through this one particular park. And so I knew I was frustrated. I had a lot of thoughts going on. I didn't know I was going to move to Michigan yet. So we went out, and I was having issues with my ex at the time, and all I knew is that I wanted to be as far away from as possible. So I went out to the back. I went out as far as I could, and finally I look up and I see the back of Half Dome, and it's just beautiful. I mean, you're up there tucked away. You're also wondering if maybe a grizzly bear will pop out of the trees at any moment. But as soon as I saw the back of Half Dome, I just cried. I knew that this wasn't where I was meant to be. And so that started my journey here to Grand Rapids. And when I got here, that's what I practiced. And it was a practice in vulnerability, in allowing things to just be as they are. And it was such a difficult thing to do. And I think I started that journey prior because it was like, here I am. Oh, I come back from this trip. I broke up with my boyfriend. I decided I was going to move to Michigan, and I had to find housing. It was like all in 2 months. It was July, August, and then, I was moving in September. And it was just one right after the other, finding a place to live. And then I quit my job and I went to Burning Man, and I did all of these insane things that I never thought I would do. And I thought I was about ready to crumble. I thought I was going to fall apart. And that in itself, as soon as I landed home to be among my mom, my brother, and my sister, I didn't know anybody else in Michigan at the time, besides maybe an aunt and an uncle. But to allow myself to live in that vulnerability. And I find that Pema Chodron is a wonderful everything. There's so much she talks about that allows us to come back to that and to embrace that, that groundlessness, and that impermanence of things, to know that it's going to be okay, and that's another reason why that title is so appropriate. How we live is how we die. Because we could just live in what we think is this, permanent suffering, this permanent anger, this permanent pain. But why waste these moments when we could be doing not that? All right. Well, any other last comments about bodhisattvas? I'd love to hear it. Let's keep this discussion going.
I don't attend a Buddhist temple to hear about Christianity or Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't know, maybe this is kind of stepping into that groundlessness, coming here tonight, not knowing what I would hear or experience. The way you brought the two together, you wove them back and forth, it helped me look at what's written in the Bible differently. Not that I'm ready to open it up and read it again, but it's cracked the possibility. It's softened my resistance and some of the ill feelings and experiences that I've had in the past, that seeing the similarities, even though many people have said that, but hearing you bring those together in a very concrete way just helps soften that for me. So thank you.
I'm glad. I'm really glad. I read Living Buddha, Living Christ probably 4 times in the last month, because I wanted to really stepping into that world of calling Jesus a bodhisattva can sometimes seem, what's the word I'm looking for? People would be, there are some people who would be very, very upset about it, because to them there isn't that connection. Jesus is more than a bodhisattva, in some people's eyes, and then we get into that whole duality question, right? But Thich Nhat Hanh made some very apparent and eye-opening statements in his book, and that gave me that courage to see past what other people have put on Jesus's thoughts and teachings, because that's really what it is. It's often been this like storytelling for thousands of years of, well, this is what Jesus said. Well, this is what Jesus. Well, this is how I interpret what Jesus said, and it's gotten lost in using his words of love and kindness to control, and which I think is really unfortunate. And I don't think that all Christian beliefs want it to be that way. But I do find that just as much as the Buddha had so many wonderful things and teachings that have helped me in my life, there's also so much to look for when you can see, if you can see it in scripture, which can be hard to do. So I think for the rest of our service, we are going to be spending our time in meditation, and it's an open-ended meditation. At 7:30, we will be done. But if you would like to leave before then, please leave. Get home safe. Don't feel like you have to stay here the whole time. So, with that, please join me in meditation. And I wish you all a wonderful holiday and a very happy new year. And I wish you all to get home safe. Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.